All right, welcome into a special Saturday edition of the Pump Fake. Jarrett Bailey, the head coach of our program, Todd Haley, fresh off of the Steelers' Week 2 17-0 loss to the New York Jets. A couple other preseason games last night, a few others taking place as we begin to record right now. Lots to dive into, pal. How are you?
Doing good. Interesting game. We knew it was going to be a big game, important game for a lot of guys. I thought it was really cool to see Ryan Clark's son out there playing for the Jets. He made a couple plays. Seeing Ryan on the visiting sideline was weird. But just like Joey Porter Jr., you know, these were kids that Mike T had out there, let them get in line and go through drills and individual and talk to the team and do all kinds of great things. So that was pretty cool to see. But, you know, we can talk running back situation, quarterbacks, obviously. Some guys showed up on defense, I thought. That was a good sign. You know, overall, I mean, that's what you're looking for. You're trying to figure out the makeup of your team. And this game 2 is an important game in that process.
Yeah, we'll touch on the good, bad, and ugly of all positions here. Obviously, the focal point being on the quarterback. So that's where we'll start here today. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the best place to take in our show. Please be sure to subscribe as we chase down that 18,000 subscriber mark and hopefully get to 20 before the end of the 2026 season. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts to the Pump Fake. So let's start off with the quarterbacks, and we'll touch on Will Howard. He got the start. Mike McCarthy had said earlier in the week, seeing all I need to see from Mason Rudolph, only going to play the two young guys in Will Howard and Drew Allar. And Howard comes out, goes 10 of 15, throws 2 interceptions, the first of which a very I don't know how he didn't see Andre Cisco. I watched it back on the coach's film, and Cisco read him the entire way. It looked like Howard really telegraphed the pass, which, you know, you're going to see from a young quarterback. The second of which both were intended for Roman Wilson. The second one, an underthrown ball. Samuel Womack picks it off. I saw a lot of folks throwing Roman Wilson under the bus here a little bit, saying that he was drifting downfield, and that was, you know, a fair criticism. Regardless, bad decisions by Will Howard, bad throws by Will Howard. I, you know, gave my thoughts already on the channel last night with Steelers Central, so I don't want to ramble on too long here. But my takeaway was that, hey, this was his opportunity to make the Steelers, the coaching staff, their jobs a little bit more difficult when it comes to this decision on the quarterbacks. Instead, he made it very easy. The only way that I see him on the roster is if he comes back on the practice squad after he gets cut.
Yeah, and I get your feelings, Jared. But, you know, as I said last week, as I said about a bunch of guys that played this time of year, you can't put too much value in it. You know, was DK Metcalf out there? I don't think so. Was Michael Pittman Jr. out there? No. Did they game plan? Probably not much. Maybe they had one practice. You know, going against, you know, on cards, the Jets defense. So that's why you just can't put too much into it. No different than with Drew Allar. You know, he's playing in the second half with a lot of even lesser players that he's going against and playing with. So, you know, I thought there were some positives, though. I really did, you know, with Will Howard. I mean, still for a second time, you know, when pressure came up the middle, he went backwards. So that's a bad sign. You don't want to see it. But Drew Allar did it too and recovered once out of it. But, you know, I thought there were some good throws, some good decisions, you know, throwing the ball in tight windows, you know, that gave me a little positive feeling about what went on. Obviously, the interceptions, the one to Cisco was a killer. I mean, you're in the red zone, you got points, and as you said, kind of inexplicably throw it to where a defender is, and the ball hangs, and it's an easy pick. You know, the one to Roman, we don't know the details of exactly what he was supposed to be doing. He completed a ball like that earlier in the game, I think, to a tight end.
I think it was to Tanyan, yeah.
Yeah, to Tanya. So, you know, I don't know if it was the same concept with different people doing it or not. We don't know those things, so we can't be too quick to judge. But, you know, he bounced back after the pick. I thought he made some good throws. That's what I'd be looking for. Are you going to crack, or are you going to, come back and get after it a little bit? And I saw some of those things happen. So, not a completely negative performance. I mean, yes, the picks are easy to just dissect and say, he's terrible. But I think you got to be careful when making those decisions. I'll say again, I don't think there's going to be 4 on this roster, practice squad or not. I mean, it's just, you got a guy sitting around doing nothing really. So I think it's going to be one or the other. I'm going to stand by what I said. I mean, I think the coaches got to decide whether they feel good enough, going into the start of the season with 2 young guys as backups, Allar and Howard in this case, and you let Mason go with him sitting out there, on a field, staying ready. If something extended happened to Aaron Rodgers where you knew he was going to miss 3 or 4 games. But, again, Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. They got to decide, and it's going to be a tough decision. Do you go with 2 young guys, or do you, go with the little comfort level with Mason Rudolph, even though, he's not going to, if something long-term happened to Aaron Rodgers, whenever it happened, first game, 4th game, 5th game, if it's long-term, I don't know that they're just going to go to one of these young guys. They might be calling up Jimmy G or somebody like that, to try to keep their season alive. So it's going to be a tough decision. But Will Howard, I would just say, don't overreact. I know it's overreaction Saturday in this case. You came right off the game, and I saw some of your clips. It felt like a little bit of an overreaction, and I probably poked the bear a little bit. I stirred you up through text a couple times during the game.
Well, to play devil's advocate a little bit here, I think it's much different when you have a guy who's, Will Howard, frankly speaking, fighting for a job. And I saw some folks saying, okay, well, Fernando Mendoza also threw an interception. That's vastly different situations when you're the number 1 overall pick and when you're in your second year as a 6th round pick, vying for position on a roster. And so in this situation, I think that the biggest winner of all of it is Mason Rudolph. He stayed idle. He didn't, like I said, Mike McCarthy said he saw all he needed to see. And I think that the quarterback battle is all but complete now. I think that Rudolph's going to be the number 2, and they're not going to let Drew Allar go. They just drafted him in the 3rd round. Like, writing's kind of on the wall for Will Howard right now. If he does come back, I think it'll be in a practice squad role, or he'll get scooped up by another team. But if I'm a betting man, which I am, I would bet on Will Howard being the guy that's not there. McCarthy's never kept 4 quarterbacks. I know that this is a little bit different of a situation than maybe he's dealt with before. You pointed it out last show. I mean, it's super rare to see any team keep 4 quarterbacks. So it's a situation where he had the opportunity to make the competition, the decision by the team, a little bit more difficult, and I think he did the opposite and made it a little bit easier. That was my takeaway from everything. Again, I understand preseason and whatnot, but for guys like Will Howard, these are job interviews, and last night wasn't the best thing to put on tape if you're looking to crack that roster.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. It is a job interview, and guys drafted where he was, especially by a staff that wasn't there. There's a lot more pressure, fair or unfair. It doesn't matter. That's the way it is. But, I think the staff also chose not to play, DK or Pittman. Jalen Warren was in there, obviously. We saw a little bit of Dowdle.
Yeah.
And then in the second half, we saw some Caleb Johnson, which I want to get to because I thought that was a pretty positive performance by him. But yeah, fair or unfair, it's much tougher to be in Will Howard's position than it is to be in Mason's or Drew Allar's position. But I think what happens is tonight after they go through the tape, they're going to sit down with the scouting staff, with the coaching staff, and they're going to talk through all the variables because we don't know all those answers and we don't know what it looks like during practice. I don't anyway. I'm not there seeing what practice looks like. And this is just a step in the process. So I would just say don't overreact too much and let's see how it plays out. There's more practice left and there's another game left. So we'll have to see. I would think the direction they go in that game will tell us something.
Yeah, we'll touch on all the positive stuff too as well. I don't want this to just be, a show where I nag on quarterback play the entire time. Drew Allar, we'll touch on his play real quick though, just to get the quarterbacks out of the way. Finished the night 11 to 23, buck 10 passing. This morning, I went back and rewatched every one of his throws. Just because during game, I was in my head, I was like, okay, that's at least 4 drops, at least 5 drops. I counted 6 drops on the rewatch, and I tallied up everything. This is what we do in preseason, everybody, for our write-ups. Go and read everything up behind the steel curtain, by the way.
Did you talk about Will Howard's drops? No, because you're a Drew Allar guy.
What drops?
I saw one on the sideline. It wasn't a drop, but easy opportunity to get 2 feet down on a good outside the numbers throw. That whoever it was, the receiver, I mean, he gets one down and then he's doing a dance with his other leg. And I mean, that should have been a completion, in my opinion.
Sure, but he also went, 10 of 15. So there wasn't, if that's the only one that we can really come back to, I don't know if that one play cancels out the 2 really bad interceptions that he had. Now, look, it's not a secret that I like Drew Allar. I'm not going to push back on that narrative whatsoever. And I think he's the better option if they're trying to pick out of these 2 going forward. But there was a large discrepancy with the guys that Allar was playing with compared to who Howard was playing with, and the 6 drops that he had compared to, the one that you just pointed out on the sideline. I can't remember who it was that Howard threw that ball to on the sideline. It might have been Jeremy Bernard. It might have been one of the more depth pieces. But overall, Allar had the 38-yard completion to Lake McCree down the sideline. What did you make of his overall performance? Granted, again, a lot of guys who aren't going to be there that he was throwing to.
I thought he looked solid. I thought he showed mobility again, ability to extend plays. I mean, a couple of those ended up in checkdowns to the back, which were nifty little throws, under pressure. The scramble play down the sideline you were talking about was a big play. I mean, it was a scramble play, but he made it, which was a positive sign.
Yeah.
He wasn't able to get him into the end zone. I mean, Boswell wasn't kicking, obviously, or, Howard might have got some points at the end of the half, and then later on, Allar. So, I thought positive, coming off of last week, which was really positive. This week in a little tougher situation, starting the second half with a lot of backups, playing against backups. I thought positive is the way I'd talk about it. And again, knowing how these meetings work here tonight, today, whenever it's going to happen, nobody's going to go crazy. No coach is going to get up there and say, it's not close. This is a close battle, and I think they have somewhat of equal talent. I think, I remember one throw Allar made, outside the numbers late to the right. And
the 17-yard completion to Isaiah Weinstead.
Yeah, there was a little lack of arm strength from that off-platform kind of throw. That worried me a little bit. But, it's not all about arm strength. It's about making good, sound decisions. And I thought they both did a bunch of that, but then, you got to factor in the negative plays. I just, hard to get really excited about either one off of last night's game.
Yeah, I don't think it's close. We disagree on that. I know which one that I think is better. So we'll leave the quarterback play at that. You wanted to talk about Caleb Johnson. McCarthy talked after the game and said that he had a conscious effort to give him more touches. I think he ended the game with 11 carries compared to last week. He only had 2. That's another battle, right? Where we know that Jaylen Warren, Rico Dowdle, they're going to be the top 2 guys. Traditionally, I'd assume they would keep 4, which means it would come down to Lou Nichols, Travis Homer, and Caleb Johnson for those final 2 spots. There's going to be an odd man out in the running back battle. What did you make of Caleb Johnson? And do you think, if you had to guess today, is he going to be on the roster?
I think so. I mean, because, I think we talked about this last week. Warren and Dowdle, very similar backs. They're both a little undersized. They're tough, though. They run hard. They're quick. They're explosive. But you need that big back, bigger body, and to see Caleb Johnson have some positive motion as a runner, I think was really critical, because I know for me as an offensive coordinator, I wouldn't want to go in with just all undersized guys. I like Nichols, but he's kind of like Dowdle and Warren.
Yeah.
And I think he has a very good chance to make the roster. When you get to this back end, it's who helps the most on special teams, because running back is where you pull from. A special teams coach pulls from a lot. I mean, it's linebackers, it's DBs, and it's running backs. And some tight ends occasionally, and receivers, you get an explosive guy that can be a gunner or something, or be a returner. But the core of your special teams, running back is an important part of building that special teams roster. So, I think that's probably what hurts Caleb Johnson a little bit, because these other guys are a little faster and a little more explosive. But you need a big back. I mean, there's going to be situations, whether it's weather dictated, rain, cold, snow, short yardage, goal line. It's year 3. This is the make or break year for a guy like Caleb Johnson, who had a pretty good pedigree coming into Pittsburgh. It hasn't showed up. He had an early fumble that got him in the doghouse early on in his career. But, now he's got a new coaching staff. And, to go out there and have a positive, just the fact that they handed it off to him 11 times, I think was a really positive sign. But I like the mix of, if I got 2 smaller, undersized guys, I want a big guy in the mix for sure.
Yeah. And I think the big thing for him is, can he be somebody that starts contributing on special teams? I mean, that obviously go a long way in getting him a roster spot. Travis Homer, that's kind of been his ticket on NFL rosters in previous years, is he's a good special teamer. So decisions will be made at that position. A lot of tough ones to make offensively. Defensively, there was a lot that I liked. Landon Roberts, who they brought back after a year away. He played under Patrick Graham last year in Vegas. Obviously, he was with Pittsburgh for a couple years before that. He led the team in tackles, had a tackle for loss. I think that the linebacking core is basically put together at this point. Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson will be the 2 top guys. And then you've got Carson Bruner, who had a nice night himself. He had a sack, a pass batted down, Landon Roberts, and then Cole Holcomb, I think, would be those 5 guys for the linebacking room, which is good. I think that's a good rotation to have.
Yeah. Bruner, I thought, that one pressure where he ran the back over was pretty impressive. And I like his dad a lot. I mean, obviously haven't been there as a player, but as a scout when I was there, he always talked about Carson. So fun to see that. I would think he has a legit shot. But yeah, I mean, I think, it's just a matter of how many you're going to keep. It's generally a 3-4 look that we're looking at. So, that's 4 on the field every first and second down anyway, plus the rushes. So I wouldn't be shocked if they get to 6 or 7 in that area.
Yeah, somebody who could be looked at as a cut candidate is Malik Harrison. He could be the odd guy out there. They would save almost $5 million against the cap. I think he carries their 11th most expensive cap hit on the roster. And if he's going to be your 5th or 6th linebacker, I mean, that's a position you can look at and say, all right, that's probably somebody they'll let go if I'm building a 53-man roster. Secondary wise, Robert Spears-Jennings, number 28, the rookie who they took late in the draft, another nice showing. Rayshon Jenkins, really nice showing in the first half.
Jenkins stuck his face right in the fan multiple times. He really showed up, and that's what you're looking for is guys that show up on, under the lights. And then if that matches up with some of the things you've seen in practice, then you start to get excited, and those guys kind of start to climb the ladder a little bit. So, I mean, there were a lot of good things defensively. I thought, again, when you get going back to the backers real quick, what do they give you versatility wise as a linebacker, but then what can they do in the pass rush game?
Right.
Because we're seeing this league move more towards bringing waves of rushers, and obvious passing down. So, I would think you got to really dissect who are those best potential rushers, not in a blitz situation, but when you can put them on the edge and let them come off the edge and get after the quarterback a little bit. So, because you can't have, an older TJ Watt out there every single passing down, no matter what. I mean, he's gonna need a blow now and then.
Yeah. And I think, just going back to Rayshon Jenkins, I really liked the way that he was deployed. I mean, Patrick Graham, in the first 2 preseason games, Patrick Graham hasn't kept it as nearly as vanilla as I would have thought. He's showing a lot of pressure, sent Jenkins multiple times. He got the tackle for loss early on, and then he got what was almost a sack on Cade Klubnik, turned into an intentional grounding penalty. Number 19, Danico Slaughter, ran with the first team again. He had a really good camp. He's making the roster, man. Like, completely out of nowhere. I think he's been the surprise of the summer. You see Joey Porter, Jalen Ramsey not practicing throughout training camp. Who's going to step up? It was Slaughter. And I think that he did more than just impress. I think he's going to get a roster spot.
Yeah, no, he looked good. And like you said, kind of came out of nowhere. But, I think it was clear to me, Patrick Graham, some of those pressures you saw Jenkins on were run blitzes. And you want to see who's that inside nickel type guy, that isn't afraid to stick his face in there and be a run support type guy. And, those the plays he made, I think will go a long way to, solidifying him in a role, not just making the team, but finding a role within the defense. Yeah. Slaughter, again, you talked about the 2 top dogs in Ramsey and Joey Porter Jr., but you need players that can be out there and get it done. So, there were a lot for the score. You could easily fall into the trap. Oh, the Steelers stunk it up. No, I mean, there were a lot of positives on that tape, I thought, last night.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're watching preseason, it's not about, wins and losses. It's, analyzing individual players and what they can be and bring to the table during the regular season. And defensively, especially, I thought there were a lot of positives. Offensively, less so, but they'll finish their preseason next week in Buffalo. They'll chop it down to 53 guys, and then in a few weeks, they'll take on Atlanta at home to open up the regular season. Other preseason notes, just real quick, the Panthers beating Jacksonville 34-17. One of your former Columbus Aviators, Rock Taylor, caught a touchdown last night for the Panthers from
yeah, I saw that. We got a couple playing. Tay Martin in Detroit, he's been making some noise. Rock Taylor, there's a bunch of guys trying to find their way, the hard way, because they just played a full, 10-game season anyway. Yeah. Training camp and practice every day and all those things. So proud of those guys always.
Jacksonville kind of going through a running back battle of their own with Bashal Tutin, Chris Rodriguez, Amir Abdullah, who they brought in. Older guy, 33-year-old Amir Abdullah, still in the NFL.
Yeah.
They carve out a spot on the Jacksonville Jaguars running back room, as is DJ Dallas, another veteran, Jamari Taylor. They have their own running back battle going on there. Green Bay and Denver. Bo Nix came back. He threw a touchdown in his limited action to Jalen Waddle. Broncos fans will love to see that. Green Bay, big performance from their depth pieces. They need to see, their defensive guys as well. And we just talked about the Steelers defense, but not having Micah Parsons for probably the first month and a half of the year, they need to see those pieces step up. And, we've talked about them at length. So we'll see what that looks like.
Yeah, with Bo Nix coming off of the ankle, that's important. You get him out there, and Sean's great at designing a top 10 to breed success. And Bo Nix is really good at understanding exactly, what Sean wants done. But that's what you're looking for. I mean, Aaron Glenn was looking for it last night from Geno. I mean, we've heard a lot of negativity about Geno in practice and throwing picks and things like that. But for him to go out there and go down the field, stand in there a couple times, take a couple big hits, and complete the football, that was a really positive. That's when you're like, all right, get him out. You're excited when you just see the positivity. I mean, Garrett Wilson made a catch. Breece Hall wasn't out there, but Mason Allen made a big catch. You're looking for those key pieces that, I guess it's injury with DK and Pittman, but, would have loved to have seen them out there with one of these quarterbacks, in Howard's case last night. So just to kind of see what it looks like, because those are 2 big pieces for the Steelers offense.
Yeah. I'm not concerned about like either of them missing one. They were out there running routes and whatnot pregame. They'll be there, but I think it's a similar situation with Aaron Rodgers, right? Where, if they are nursing
Aaron's different. Aaron's 50 years old. These are still. I'm a big believer in you play these guys to get ready, get them, just mentally and physically ready for a season. You don't want them to get hurt, obviously, but Aaron, I give a pass. No different than I give a pass to Patrick Mahomes. Coming off a major ACL knee surgery. So. But in their case, I mean, I would have had him out there. I want to see what just a couple plays, a Mason Taylor type player, Garrett Wilson play, and then all right, get out, take your helmet off, you're good. But I think it is an important part of the process for most guys.
How did you go about it when you were a coach with the veteran guys? If they were a little bit pushbacky on going in, like were there any ever conversations with receivers or with Ben? Perhaps have been like, all right, yeah, we're going to play this amount, and that's about it. Was there ever any pushback?
No, not anywhere I've been. I mean, the players do what you tell them to do. Now, like I said, we were in the Hall of Fame game with the Steelers one of my years there, and Mike T said, hey, the starters are going to play a series. If you play good, we'll get you out. And Ben came to me privately, and he said, if you call a pass, I'll kill you, which – he was making his point, and of course I had to call one pass just to keep things honest. But no, I mean, that's all, if you're not coaching it, you're letting it happen. And that's not being old school hardcore. It's just, you had a specific plan about how, as a staff that was agreed upon how you wanted to do things. And then, you got up in front of the team and this is how we're doing it. If it goes good, you won't have to go back out. If it goes poorly, you expect to play another series. I mean, that to me is how football works. That's how guys get ready. I've told the story. Curtis Martin, he'd go to Coach Parcells, and he's a Hall of Famer, and he'd say, Parcells would say, what do you need? And he goes, I want to have 20 to 25 touches in the preseason, and then I'll feel ready. And so we'd get him 20 to 25 touches. Tom Brady wanted to be out there and get reps, and I think Patrick Mahomes generally does, but this is a little different situation. Aaron Rodgers has never been a guy that played a whole bunch in the preseason, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer. So certain guys, you got to you got to have the conversation anyway, but I'm just a big believer in getting ready to play an NFL season, even in a 17-game season. There's 3 preseason games now. At least one of those, number 2 being the one I thought it would be, even though it hasn't played out that way this year. I want to see some of these guys play a little bit.
Yeah, and we saw last week Josh Allen played for a little bit in Buffalo. Mahomes typically plays, when he's not coming off a big injury. A few years ago, it became a big thing where the Bengals never played their starters, and they'd always start the season off slow. So the past couple preseasons, they're like, all right, you have Joe Jamar T, you're getting in there because we got to do something because we keep starting off these seasons so slow. So maybe that's the issue. And I think there was a brief period where we rarely saw any starters play. I think we've gone back to it now where we mostly see those guys at least get a few reps, and I think that's good.
More, and it's good. And what I think some guys miss a little bit is what do we always say with the less practices, no 2-a-days in training camp, less padded practices. That September has kind of become an extended preseason. So to me, why wouldn't you take advantage of that? Have your guys ready to go. Come out in September and get a few wins under your belt, get above 500, win some games maybe people didn't think you were going to win. Why not take advantage of it? Why just add to the mix? But, we got a brotherhood of young coaches now that all know each other. They all talk, and that's why you hear the rhetoric on the joint practices, how much you can get out of them. I've told you I call BS on that because you'd be doing the same things in practice against yourselves and that you would do in a joint practice. You're not game planning. You're not getting anything else out of it other than fights. Now, players love it because they get to go against a different player, right, than they've been seeing for weeks. So I get that part of it. But, back-to-back joint practices, and it's just a cop-out so you don't have to play somebody in the preseason and they get hurt, even though they're getting hurt in the joint practices. How many guys have we seen go down? So it's just a lot easier to get up after practice and talk about losing an important player than it is after a preseason game when, all the TV cameras and everything are on you. So I think it's a little bit of a cop-out.
Right. Other news around the NFL, nothing too crazy outside of the preseason we talked about, although former Browns running back, Texans running back Nick Chubb announced that he's retiring from the NFL at age 30. One of the best backs of this generation. You had him briefly in Cleveland, right?
Yeah, we drafted him. Great kid, great player. Never said a peep. I mean, you didn't hear, you had to just beg to get a word out of him. I mean, he just went about his business. Strong, tough, fast runner, great vision. Unfortunately, a really tough injury, and he still tried to come back. But if that guy could have stayed healthy and been part of a really good team, I mean, he would have put up some serious numbers. Bigger than he already did.
Was there any time in Cleveland that you spent together that you saw from him early on where you're like, all right, yeah, that guy was worth the early draft pick and he's going to be very good?
Yeah, we got him at the top of the second round. It was clear very early. I mean, we had a guy, Duke Johnson, on the team, and he just got pushed to the side because this was a big back that could run. I mean, he had some Franco Harris type qualities to him, I always felt, having grown up watching Franco. And really, if he could have stayed healthy and, like I said, been on just a little more consistently good team, he would have put up numbers that I think would have really excited everybody.
Yeah, and when Cleveland had that run of getting back to the postseason and it became a real AFC threat again, he was as big a part of that as anybody. One of the better running backs of the last decade. Crazy, by the way, that we're talking about like Nick Chubb and like being in the league for a decade. I remember watching him get drafted in my dorm in college, so I was like, oh my goodness, now I'm starting to feel like time's passing by.
Please. I was in the draft room. You're in dorm in college. Come on, please.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges.
Next, you're going to be the progressive guy trying to become your parent. So I think you might already be doing it.
Maybe I might be. I don't know. I've got some qualities like that. This, let's see, when will it be? This coming May, I'll be graduated from high school for 10 years. So, it's slowly but surely it's creeping up on me. But yeah, I remember watching that draft and its completion and whatnot, and the entire draft process with Nick Chubb. Yeah, that was, what was that?
Can you imagine how that draft would have looked if the Browns at number 1 took Saquon Barkley and at number 4 took Josh Allen? What do you think that draft would look like right now?
Yeah, something tells me that you wanted that to be how you guys drafted that year. That's just an educated guess.
I love Baker, love Nick Chubb, but I also like to win a lot and keep a job.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you and I have had that conversation on here before about what you prefer to have done in Cleveland compared to what actually happened.
Yeah, and Denzel Ward, I love him too. I mean, and he's still playing at a high level. But
yeah, just got paid. Yeah,
you're just talking about something that could have been unbelievably special.
Yeah. So big what could have been
is what it is.
I suppose so. Well, that's a fun note to end the show on, I guess. Appreciate everybody for tuning in to the Pump Fake. As always, please be sure to subscribe. Get us to 20,000 subscribers, creeping toward week 1 in the NFL season. We'll finish out the week of week 2. We got one more preseason week. All these teams will cut down to 53 guys, and we'll be gearing up for the first game on a Wednesday in Australia because nothing's sacred anymore in our world. God almighty, I'll be happy on the Wednesday that I don't have to wait the additional day, but come on, man, what are we doing?
I love it.
I know you do.
Bring it on. Single standalone football games are the best.
I do like them. As a Steelers fan, if I could sign up for 17 1:00 games, that would be prime for me. But yeah, I enjoy a standalone game, but do I think we need an international game every week like Roger Goodell wants? No, I don't think that needs to happen. I don't need to wake up at 9:00 every week to watch 13 hours of consecutive football because you want to play in Bangladesh or wherever you are.
Okay, unplug your heating blanket you have sitting on your lap. or you probably got a heating pad on your back. I mean, you're acting like you're 90
I don't like the hot. You know this.
Football, bring it on. I can't wait. I want to see how these coaches handle the trip to Australia. Who goes early, who goes late. There's a lot of interesting things going on. I didn't like to be in those games as a coach, but I'd sure love to watch them on TV.
Yeah, well, that's what time are they doing that Melbourne game? Because that's a complete.
They're kicking off at 10 a.m. their time, so it'll be on prime time here.
Okay, well, that makes sense then, I guess.
But the players, they got to get acclimated to practicing at 10 o'clock in that time zone so they can be ready. It's going to be interesting. And you got two forward thinkers in Shanahan and McVay. I think we saw McVay last year just take his team the day before on a trip to London and go out there and ball out. So I'll be interested to see how those two guys handle it. They've probably talked to every Olympian, soccer coaches, soccer trainers, teams that travel around the world. I mean, I'm sure they've done the research, and it's going to be fun to see how it plays out.
Imagine if the 49ers start off the year and just beat the hell out of the Rams. I think that's the most interesting possibility from week one, or at least from that game, is, all right, everybody expects the Rams to go in with all this new star power to win handedly. What if the 49ers is like, we don't care, and they win by 15? I think that could be.
Well, the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan and his staff, they'll be using that. Nobody thinks we have a chance, but that's why McVay trying to manage expectations, not only outwardly, but within the building with the players, especially. I mean, you can't have your players thinking it's just going to happen because everybody in the world is saying it's going to happen. You gotta put the work in and be ready to go and go out and make it happen. So it's interesting balance on both sides, because Shanahan has that ammo right there. Hey, here's the spread. Here's what everybody's saying. We got no chance, and players tend to respond to that.
Well, I know whatever the spread is, I'll bet the 49ers to cover, even though a few weeks ago I was saying that the Rams were going to win pretty handedly. Those two teams always play each other pretty close. Shanahan actually, when it comes to playing McVay, I believe he's got the upper hand in terms of all-time records. So it's a good game that we'll get. I don't love that it's a divisional game being taken away from one of their home games, but it'll be a fun game. And I look forward to it. We're only a few weeks away, and be sure to spend the NFL season here with us at the Pump Fake. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Take care till then.